समझ नहीं आ रहा अपने सैलरी इंक्रीमेंट का क्या करूं।
बेटा इतना क्या सोच रहा है, अपने म्यूचुअल फंड्स के एसआईपी का टॉपअप करा ले। दिस इज द राइट टाइम।
क्या समझ में नहीं आया।
बेटा इतना क्या सोच रहा है, अपने म्यूचुअल फंड्स का एसआईपी टॉपअप करा ले। दिस इज द राइट टाइम।
अब समझा।
Mutual fund investments are subject to market risks. Read all scheme-related documents carefully.
So welcome to the Worldview with Swasti. As you know that anti-government protests have erupted across all of 31 of Iran's provinces in a wave of unrest that marks the biggest challenge to the Iranian regime in years. An ongoing communications shutdown, which is unprecedented in scale, has been, imposed by authorities. It's been a few days since then as well. And it has isolated the country from outside world amid this unrest. So what is happening in Iran? What is the cause of these protests? And what is the end game? Where is the country headed to? Of course, these are questions which are very relevant for India because Iran is an important strategic partner to India. But then we have to ready ourselves for what is going on in the country. And to understand that, today I have a very special guest joining me from Stockholm. She's Iranian. Her name is Golaleh Sharafkandi. Golaleh Sharafkandi is a prominent Iranian activist. I'm sure if you have anything to do with Iranian politics, you must have seen her pictures all over the internet. And she's also been an advocate of women's rights and human rights. In her, earlier life, she has been associated with several political organizations, but now she prefers to be identified as a prominent activist. Today, she's joining me from Stockholm. Golaleh, what a pleasure to welcome you to Worldview with Swasti, and thank you so much for agreeing to speak to Indian audience.
Hello, and thank you for having me.
All right, so let's just begin with what is going on in Iran. And before I come to that, because of course, it has literally taken everybody by surprise in terms of, the scale of these protests and the manner in which they have spread all across the country. And Iran is a very big country. Let's just begin, with you. Please, could you tell us a bit about your own activism and your very famous family? Of course, would you like to tell us a little bit about that and how come you are in Stockholm?
Yeah, actually, there are so many Iranian people who are living in exile. It is not something that we have chosen to leave our country. Actually, we have been forced to leave our country and to live in exile. So many Iranians, millions and millions of Iranians who are living abroad, not by choice, but because of the situation in Iran. I have been an activist. I am coming from a family who has been politically active, struggling or somehow asking for a democratic system and free choice. And that's why we had to pay the price. You mentioned my family. My uncle, who has been the leader of Kurdistan Democratic Party of Iran, has been participating in Socialist International Congress in Berlin in 1992, when he has been assassinated after the SI Congress in Berlin in a restaurant called Mykonos. And this is, and then later, during a court process in Germany, which carried out in Germany, and the final verdict came out in April 1997, in which it was mentioned clearly that the authorities of Iran has ordered the assassination of my uncle. And that's why when in 1997, April 1997, so many European countries called their ambassador from Iran, and there was a gap of communication or relation between European countries and Iran. And this is the only case where we have the exact verdict saying that the authorities in power in Iran has been ordering the assassination, and it carried out with the help of Hezbollah the assassination in Germany. Happened in Europe, actually. And then I come from a family which has been part of the Kurdish movement and resistance movement. I have experienced prison several times. The first time I was 14 years old, just because of belonging to this family and just for asking so many questions and trying to be active regarding the human rights cases.
Right.
Second time, 18 years and later, so I had to leave Iran.
Right. Thank you for telling us about your life journey, Golaleh, and it's been nothing short of fascinating. But for the benefit of the Indian audience, could you help us understand a little bit better about the social fabric and how are these different ethnicities spread across Iran? Because, of course, when we are watching it from New Delhi, we are seeing that the protests have erupted across all of provinces. But then there are several minorities as well. It's not just that there are Kurdish people, there are Azeri people, there are Baloch people, etc. Could you just help us understand which are those minorities that are pro-government, anti-government? How do we understand that best?
Actually, when we talk about the regime does not recognize any minorities because the regime wants to define the population as a Muslim population, and the main characteristic for the regime, which is based on a specific interpretation of Sharia, which is not even the whole Islam. It is a specific version of Islam. So they do not consider any differentiation or do not recognize any type like ethnic minorities' rights regarding their language, their right to their culture, their right to somehow a kind of not centralized in a way to divide the power and give a kind of recognition for the people of those marginalized communities to have a say in their deciding about their destiny or about distribution of the resources of Iran. Because you mentioned Baloch. Baloch minorities are among those who are living in a very rich province where the many sources of the natural sources are located there, but they are among the poorest communities in Iran. They do not have even drinking water. They do not have identification card. So we are talking about those marginalized groups in Iran. When we talk about Kurdish people, since Kurdish people, they didn't join the government or this regime coming into power in 1979, so they have been considered as the minority who need to be punished, need to be controlled, need to be deprived because they are against the regime from the very first day this regime coming to power. They issued in 1979. They issued fatwa against Kurdish people, a jihad fatwa against Kurdish people. So the Khomeini announced that you can kill them because they are not believers. While Kurdish people are among people, there are Muslims. Kurds have different religious groups. Some of them are Muslims, and you cannot issue jihad against Muslims, because in Iran you have different groups, Muslims, non-Muslims, you have different ethnic groups, you have different minorities. But this regime does not recognize these variations, and they suppress systematically those
Okay.
belongings to those minorities.
Okay, and now let us try and connect this to what has been happening there since the end of December, which is almost the 28th of December when the protest first began. Please tell us, why are the Iranian people protesting right now?
Let me tell you another point. You remember in 2022 when the
Yes.
Women Life Freedom movement
Yes.
began. It was about Gina, a Kurdish girl being in Tehran, and they arrested her and they killed her during the arrest, actually.
Mhm.
But when she said her brother said to those forces that we are not from here, please let us go. Please let us go. And when he mentioned that they are not from Tehran and they are Kurds, so it was the reason to be punished even harder. Now, when we are talking about this new movement, it is different. When you mentioned 28th of December, this time, it is not only about, women life freedom. It is about the situation that the Iranian people are experiencing daily. Iran is not a poor country. It is a rich country. They use the resources. They use the resources in Lebanon, in arming, those forces. It is about priority. They somehow suppress their own people and try to put pressure on them. Economic pressure does not come from the international sanction. It comes.
Okay, it is interesting. Yeah,
Yeah.
it is interesting that you mentioned this because one of the consistent reasons given for the economic hardships in Iran has been the Western sanctions, that Iran has been under Western sanctions for so many decades, and as a result, there is economic hardship. But you are telling me that this is not coming from sanctions. So what is it that it is coming from?
But, Iran uses the resources, even those available resources, to arm the Hezbollah, to arm Hashd Shabi, to arm those forces that they have outside Iran. So they do not prioritize their own people and the economic situation for their own people. They rob their own people of all sources to be able to stay in power. That's the situation. And people had enough. They do not afford even buying bread. They do not afford meat. And, the situation is getting worse and worse every day. So it is about a normal life. They do not want so much. They do want, but they just want freedom. They want a decent life, human life. In a country where there are so many resources, why the Iranian people need to be so poor, so deprived? That's the question. So they do not want a foreign country to come and to liberate them. They want the international community to hear their voice. They have been in the streets several times, and the government tried to suppress, to crack down harshly, to kill its own people. But in every movement, you have several elements. You have people who are resisting against the system, against the suppression. And then you have a regime which is on the verge of collapse, but they bring military forces from Iraq to crack down to kill the people inside Iran. There are reports that those who are killing people right now in Iran, they are not Iranian because the guard members are not ready to kill anymore. And then they have their own children abroad, living abroad in the best universities and in the best situation. They created a country where their own relative do not want to live there. They are living abroad in the state, in the Europe, in all over the country, the world. And then there are the international community who has been silent in so many situations where they could help the Iranian people in a way. I do not want the international community to come and to use the military forces, but there are so many other options. For example, when the military forces who are killing my people, they are armed, but the people who are protesting in the street, they are empty-handed.
Yeah.
So when they talk about sanctions, those sanctions are not effective, actually.
Well,
they need
yeah,
to be combined with a real.
Okay, I'm going to be coming to the role of, extra-regional actors and, of course, also actors like Israel, for example. I'm going to come to that. But just for the record, I think it's very important for the audience to know who are watching you right now, is that, when we talk about economic problems, they should know that the Iranian rial, it plunged to roughly 1.4 million per US dollar in late December. And that was the reason that shattered the already fragile markets and triggered the strikes that started. And it started from the Tehran's Grand Bazaar. So this is just for the record. And when you talk about debts, I'd also like to mention here is that we have, extremely, differing accounts. By some accounts, they say that about 500 to 1,000 people have died. And there are certain accounts that say that already 10,000 people have died. So that is the level of, that is the scale of what is going on in Iran. And before I come to the next question, I think, Golaleh, you were mentioning about the other factors and how, what you can do about the regime. But before we get there, could you help us also understand how, or if you think this is correct or not, do you think that the protests that are erupting right now, it's been almost more than 2 weeks and it's still going on and it's spreading all over. The crackdowns have gotten more, serious. How are they different from the scope and scale of the protests that had erupted in 2022? Which was the woman life freedom movement. Of course, I know that it was more centered around women. But this time around, where do you think is the main difference?
Let me begin with this, but I need to add some points to the discussion that you made, to the point that you mentioned. The difference is when after the woman life freedom movement, the Iranian people can never go back to prior to that point, because prior to that point, it was about reforms. If it was about changes in the system or the behavior of the regime. But after women life freedom, it was asking for the whole system to be changed. It was asking for regime change. Even this time, it is very clear that people does not want reforms, that they do not want any other version of this regime. What we hear in the streets of Iran, it is about complete collapse of this regime and a new system to replace this regime. This is for me, this is the main difference. And it is like, this is the main difference. But at the same time, when you mention the economic situation, let me tell you, the problem is that the government used those US dollars in other places and try to force the ordinary people to pay the differences. They have access to the US dollar, but they print money without the credibility, and then they force ordinary people to compensate that difference. This is the situation I want just to make clear. Regarding the reports, regarding the casualties, I need to tell you, last time I was able to talk to my sisters and my family members inside Iran, It was on Wednesday,
Okay.
last week. Since
Yeah. So it has been
Thursday-
almost 1 week now, almost.
Yeah.
Because it's,
Since Thursday, last week, every communication with Inside is completely shut down. And we do not have access to any reports. There are various reports saying that there are more than 10,000 killed and almost 3,000 people has lost their vision because the military forces shot in their eyes in a very close range. This is a catastrophe that they are able to shut down a whole country and nobody react in the international community. If they do not have anything to cover up, why they do not allow the independent reporters to be present and why they shut down the communication? You know, more than 10 million Iranians are living abroad, and we do not have any information about from our relatives inside. So this is the main reason that they have something to hide. They do not want access or the communication or access to information.
okay. I'm glad, you mentioned earlier, and I think that was a very clear statement you made, Golaleh, when you said that this time around, people do not want merely reforms, and that's something important you mentioned. They said that they want a total change. So they want the regime to go, in different words. But as I am trying to understand what is going on in Iran, I'm also seeing that while these protests are extremely widespread, and there is absolutely a lot of palpable anger in people, and you mentioned all the economic problems, and we've been discussing all the problems, but one still doesn't see a leadership within Iran around which it can all rally. So you don't really see a unifying factor, a unifying leader. We keep hearing of Shah, who's living in the West and who says that I am the leader. One doesn't know what kind of a legitimacy would he have. Do the Iranian people want him? Do the Iranian people want a democratic transition? So also help me understand that while the anger is there and the protests are there, what about that one unifying leader to actually lead it? And in the absence of that, where does it all go?
I told you that there are so many factors involved in this situation regarding the opposition of the regime, regarding us in abroad, regarding the regime, the international community, lack of support, and all those things. One of the things is the alternative, actually. This regime has been able to create a kind of divide and conquer, to create a kind of gap between, those who are in center against Kurdish people, those who are believers against those who are not non-believers or non-Muslims, men against women, to control women by men, those who are inside against those who are abroad. And then, as any other community or society, we have different political ideologies or different political families. If it is a free country, you might have a parliament, and in this parliament, you might have different political groups have their own representatives in the parliament. But in the process of when this regime has been able to divide us and to make those gaps between us in a way, those who are wealthy against those who are poor. We see so many people in the street, they are not wealthy. They are poor people, they are deprived people who pay the price. And the regime used this situation to avoid any unified front, actually. But what keeps us together, it is the same enemy, which is this regime. Regarding the transition period, we needed the international community's help. And if they can help us during the transition, so we will be able to create a parliament, a transition parliament, in which we can decide regarding the alternative. We need help for this part, actually. There are so many people right now in the streets shouting Pahlavi's name. In Kurdish provinces, it is different because we have both royalists and Republicans, and in Kurdish people or in the marginalized communities, we are asking for a kind of not centralized system, but a kind of federative or decentralized system to be able to be part of the system somehow.
Right. And that also brings me...
We are not capable of solving all those problems right now. We need a kind of, transition period to be able to reach that point. But to be able to reach that point, we needed the international community for one time to see the reality and to be able to decide enough is enough.
Yeah. But Golaleh, I mean, here I can't help but think about Donald Trump, because Donald Trump, from the very early days, I'm sure when you're saying the international community, you're perhaps referring to two main actors who can make, some difference, because we saw that happening earlier. And here I'm referring to Israel and the United States, okay? Because Israel went ahead and had a direct confrontation backed by the United States. Last year, it was a 12-day war. And then I'm just referring to Donald Trump's statements this time around. And when he said a couple of times that he's watching it very closely, and then if there are any deaths, then he is going to take a decisive action. But so far, nothing has happened. And from what you've been telling me, you're telling me that more than 10,000 people have died. Do you really genuinely believe that Donald Trump is going to do something about it when you say an international community, or who do you exactly have in mind?
The Iranian regime is very, very capable of buying time. Each time when they shut down the internet, this is not the first time, and then they offer negotiation. They have they offered Donald Trump that we are ready for negotiation. And it is not about real negotiation. They want to convince Trump and to buy time, and during this time to be able to get together and somehow to suppress the protest in a way. The problem with the international community, with Israel, with Donald Trump, it is not about their intention. It is about Iran attempting them. When they say we need to abolish the whole Israel, the whole Jews in the world. So this is a kind of attention. This is a kind of somehow making them to react in a way. I do not want to say whatever. So ordinary people pay the price for the problem that the regime creates in the region and try to interfere with the domestic affair of the neighboring country. And that's something that the USA cannot stand anymore, because they feel that their forces in the region do not have the security. That's the reason that Donald Trump wants to react. But at the same time, I am not inviting Donald Trump to topple the regime for me, but I need them to abide by the promises that they express. This is the case, because in several other cases they showed the regime that they are flexible and they change their rhetoric as soon as Iran is ready to give a kind of something in return to compromise.
And may I also ask you about your reading of what Israel might have in mind?
The Israeli regime, the previous time, during the attack, they had some airplanes coming to attack the Khamenei. And then we heard from Trump that it was Trump who convinced them to call back those air forces. Actually, there are differences of interest. Israel feels unsafe because of the missiles that the Iranian regime has. So for Israel, it is about life or death. But for the USA, it is about benefits, and it is somehow different. In this case, so if Israeli wants to I want to say that the price to be paid by Israel is a very high price. So they are ready to do other strategy, to choose other strategies. But it is the USA does not allow them to.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. And just while
I understand.
Yeah, please go ahead. Yes. Yeah.
It is
Okay.
It is my understanding.
Right. And no, of course, I mean, here I'm trying to understand your country, basically, and the various complications, the various complexities that perhaps we from a distance are not able to understand, right? But just as my last question, because you've been very kind with your time, and I know it's very late for you, you've just finished work and you're staying back just to speak to us. Nonetheless, my last question to you is that right now, when you see these thousands of people take to the streets and facing bullets and facing all the crackdown, do you also see that there is a presence or a help from external actors? And why I ask you this question, Golaleh, is because this continues to be a very popular theory, let's say, in the rest of the world, saying that these protests are constantly fanned by external actors that are averse to the regime, or they're opposed to the regime. This is not something which is purely organic. Would you agree with that? Or what are your thoughts?
You mentioned my previous affiliation with a political party. That political party has access to weapon, and they could help people if it was the case. While this is not the case. They are not inside. They do not provide any military actions, anything like this. But let me tell you, when the regime uses any army access, anything to suppress the people, the ordinary people has a right to defend themselves. This is a human right. So they have the right to defend themselves. They use stun. They do not have access to weapon. They do not have anything like this. They are completely empty-handed. The only access that they might have is a kind of news coverage receiving from some international media. This is the only thing that they have. And the regime cannot accuse them because of this is something behind this. Because the international community and access to the internet creates a world in which we do not have borders. And we learn that ordinary people or ordinary life, how is ordinary life outside those borders? When the young teenager girls inside Iran ask for their right to choose their life, their clothes, who they want to love, who they want to be, to live with, this is an ordinary life. This is not so much to ask. So the regime cannot tell that the international community try to convince them to topple this regime. This is ordinary people asking for ordinary life, a decent life, nothing more than this.
Well, yes. I mean, on this note, I have to thank you, Golaleh, for your, for your time, for this effort that you've made, and your willingness to come and speak to us. We are watching this, of course, very closely because, this is something which is very serious. This revolt has pulled in the lower income Iranians and the middle class at the same time. And this is a convergence that many experts have predicted to be extremely worrisome for the regime. And we are going to be
There is no
taking...
middle class left in Iran. You have poverty. And then there are a minority who has access to all resources. Those who are connected to the regime, they have access to all resources and very luxury life. And then you have ordinary people who are really poor. There is no middle class left.
All right. Well, yes, I mean, the situation is pretty dire. And of course, I mean, we are going to be watching this very, very closely. And so I have to thank you for taking the time out. And you keep watching for the next episode of Worldview with Swasti.
Thank you.